afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our Lunch and Learn Data Science with Open Canada Data. I will start sharing my screen right away, and we will start the presentation today with our guest speaker, Jason Moffat. So everyone just please make yourself comfortable, and we will start shortly. Okay. All right. So Jason, I see you are there already, right?
Weird, I can't get my headphones
Okay.
to work.
We'll wait for a couple of more minutes. I'll just make sure I will mute everyone so we don't have other sounds. Now, again, this presentation today will be actually very short. We will recap a few things which we talked about last week and answer a couple of questions which were asked last time. So I hope you can see on your screen the title for today's meeting. Jason, can you or someone can put thumbs or just let me know if you can see my screen? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Now, okay, good. So again, let's just jump into the discussion because I will have to leave also very soon in about 40 minutes, and Jason will have to leave in 30 minutes. So we are recording this session so that other people will be able to watch it offline. So we'll continue discussion about the analysis of the data related to vaccine side effects. And last week we looked at the data which is provided by the government of Canada and also by the government of United Kingdom and United States. And we have shown the app which was built by Jason, which is called Cave, and I will try to, yeah, that's the app which Jason has showed us last time. And you remember it's the app which accesses open data, and then it allows you to visualize different side effects based on the information which you provide somewhere in the menu here. So the question which we had was the following. Okay, so what is the difference between side effects for young people and let's say elderly, under 20 and maybe under 40 or over 40? That's question number one. And question number two was really, can we substantiate the claims which we made last time, specifically when we said that the number of severe adverse reactions from vaccines already possibly significantly exceed the number of complications from COVID. And we had a slide prepared by provided by Jason, which showed this time series, which shows the graph of COVID deaths, the orange curve in here, which goes down with time, and essentially since summer last year, it's very insignificant compared to other causes of deaths. And then we have the blue line here, which is the number of deaths from a COVID vaccine. And as we saw, these lines really become close to each other, starting from summer last year. And this graph is for all ages. Now, from the other source, we know that majority of people who die of COVID are 70 years and more. So people who are younger than 20 years or 40 years of age, in fact, they very rarely die of COVID. For people 20 years of age and less, it's 0.1% likelihood that you could die of COVID. So that's why we put it in agenda today. 2 items: variation by age, and how do we compute weekly stats from reported data? Because where do we get these numbers, weekly numbers, right? Weekly number of COVID deaths or weekly number of vaccine deaths. So as always, we have a disclaimer that the views expressed here are only those of the authors, and we are not doing it on the as part of our work with any agency or university department. And also the reminder that we are processing for these discussions in our group, we process mainly 3 Canadian sources, which are listed right here. One is Daily Epidemiology Update, which I have already processed, or which I have already opened in here. You would see. Then we have Canadian COVID-19 Vaccination Safety Report, and also Statistics Canada report, where we have time series data of deaths by cause. So that's the graph which was obtained from UK. And in a few minutes, Jason, I will let you tell more about how these numbers are obtained, but I can talk a little bit about the data which we have in Canada. So these 2 graphs are obtained from those 2 different sources which were listed above, and one shows COVID vaccine serious adverse reactions in Canada. So in here, okay, I hope you can see it. And the other one is the number of COVID deaths. Now, for vaccines, in fact, they do report how many of these serious adverse reactions were for children under 11 and under 17 years of age. For deaths, they also provide some statistics. Now, to make it easier for everyone, I made a page called, and I'll show it, ivim.ca. If you go there, you would see it's a redirect to the Open Canada Vital Statistic Death portal. And in there, you would see that we have all these numbers pasted in the spreadsheet. So that's where you would find all the numbers and many other documents which we have already created there. You'll find on this page. Now, let's get back to the presentation and just review again what has been said in the past. How do we compute the number of deaths from COVID, in particular of those vaccinated and not vaccinated, from the official data? There is table 2 in one of those reports, and these are the numbers which are highlighted here. So right here highlighted 4 numbers. So these are the numbers which we paste directly into the spreadsheet. So that's the spreadsheet which you will find from the ivim.ca website. So we put these numbers right here. So these are 5 numbers. These are the numbers of cases, and then for numbers for hospitalization, and the number of deaths which happened in the last, which were reported in the last report. And in fact, we just entered this morning, we entered the numbers for today, for a report which was issued today. And as you would see, the numbers keep getting high. When you recompute these numbers for the weekly number of cases, so the number of cases which were among fully vaccinated now is 78.6%. How do we get these numbers? we essentially need to subtract these numbers in red boxes from each other. And where do we get these old reports? We get them from the archive, from the archives which are available on this web.archive.org. So there is a website where you can just paste your URL. And for example, right now I will paste this URL. And you would see all archived reports for Canada. And then you can subtract those numbers from one another, and you would arrive to the numbers which are pasted into this spreadsheet. So again, I will highlight, these are the numbers you see, which were entered today, the last row, and the second last row, the numbers from the report a week ago. And when you subtract those numbers, you get exactly how many, let's say, fully vaccinated people died last week. And we see that in last week, there were 153 people who died of COVID, and they were fully vaccinated. In total, there were 238 people who died of COVID, and 143 of them were fully vaccinated. So that's how these numbers are obtained. Now, let's get back to the question on how do we compute these numbers? How do we compute the numbers, and how do we measure counts of deaths from COVID and deaths from vaccine? So in the GC Collab discussion, I have posted this 5-step process how you can measure it yourself, because these numbers are not reported, and I guess for obvious reasons these numbers are not the numbers which you would like to report and you would like to show everyone. But the numbers are there, they're in PDF files, so these numbers need to be manually actually written. You have to subtract the count as we have done it. You see, that's how many COVID deaths weekly, let's say, we had. And we already know that almost 80% of those COVID deaths which happened last week were of fully vaccinated, right? Then you could multiply it, actually, you could divide this by some factor, because it is known that COVID deaths, in fact, are not deaths from COVID. These are deaths with the positive COVID test within 24 days of the death. And so optionally, you could have a factor there. Now, and then essentially there is another page in the same document, in the document epidemiology update, which shows you by age, and this is pasted right here. It's on table. I hope you can see it. It takes a couple of seconds to load the page, but there is cases by age. And again, we have just entered this data today. And look for age 0 to 11, or actually to 20. There is no change. Essentially, it's very, very important that children under 20 years of age, look, 0 deaths. In fact, for people under 40, there was one death since last week. So again, we can see that most deaths happen in population which is 70 and plus. So that's why we know that, in fact, for younger population, there are very few deaths of COVID. But on the other hand, when we looked at the side effects, and again in the same spreadsheet, which you will be able to find from ivim.ca website, there is a page which also shows you side effects by age, and you can see by age it's not zero. So essentially in last week there were some number of severe events in younger population. So that's the key point. Now, Jason, I would like to give floor to you, and maybe you could just show us if we can use your app which you have built, just to compare younger and older people. For example, if they would like to compare different side effects, is it possible to do it with your app?
Yeah, there's no reason why it wouldn't be. I only work in kind of sort of 10-year age brackets. That's the only thing. So I can't cut at 20 years and under, for example, at the moment.
Okay. So again,
there's nothing to stop.
The observation which we made from Canadian data is really people under 40 have very few deaths of COVID, but they do have complications from vaccine, from the vaccine. So, and
yeah.
And I guess in you.
Can I share my screen? Because I actually wrote a Substack article on the differences between those over 40 and under 40, particularly on deaths. And there was an interesting finding which might be useful to share.
Excellent. So, if you have a link to maybe to that article, we will share it with the community.
Yeah, I can put that in now, actually.
Yeah, and another thing, so I had two questions for you, because I know you also need to leave in 10 minutes. So there was another question, which was on how do you get these numbers in your graph? Because everyone was kind of red-pilled by this graph that shows that indeed we now have approximately the same number of deaths from COVID as from a vaccine. And
well, it's the data's quite old now, but I can talk through where I got the data from and how I drew that graph. So
do you want to share your screen?
Yeah.
Or what is the best for you? Or I can show it. Maybe actually, you know what? Because I have it opened already on my screen. I opened this. It's a Government of United Kingdom page, because you provided me some guidance on that, right? So you can see my screen just for the sake of time. That's the official Government of United Kingdom portal, and it lists, I guess, and you can correct me if I'm on the right side, but I think that's where you showed me there are PDF files. Actually, there are multiple PDF files.
That's correct. Yeah.
For each type of vaccine. So, for example, for Pfizer, right? So we can open this PDF file, and we will open it right now live. So it's all live. We will open it, and again, one of the complaints, observations which you made is that this data is in PDF file. So it's not very easy for you or for anyone else to actually extract and manipulate this data, right?
Yeah.
So,
I mean, if you have a look at that data now, you'll see that there's 115 pages just in the Pfizer.
That's right. That's right. And I will quickly just scroll down, and I think you showed me it's at the bottom of this document, right at the bottom. So here it is: total fatal outcome report. Now, this is quite a big number, but do you know starting from which date are they counting?
So that's cumulative from the introduction of the vaccine in the UK. And I think the total number is over 2,000 for all manufacturers. So it's just 750. I can't see it quite. 734, I think I can see, just for Pfizer. So that's cumulative since the Pfizer vaccine was licensed.
Okay, so the numbers which you plot in your graph are essentially is a difference between this report and the report which was published last week, right?
Yeah, so what they don't do is they don't give you the deltas each week. So what I had to do was download each of the reports, because they get overwritten each week. and I took each of the headline numbers from the major categories of side effects, which include the number of side effects for each of the major categories and the number of deaths. I put that into a spreadsheet, and then I basically subtracted this week from last week to give me the delta for each of the manufacturers, and that was used as one of the bottom of the two lines.
I see.
That was used for the weekly number of deaths by calculating the deltas between those PDFs.
I see you're doing exactly what we've been doing here. We also had to manually to paste those numbers from PDF files. I'm showing on the screen
Not a
right
good
now
way
the
to do
numbers
it.
which we were extracting manually from PDF files. Again, they're overwritten every week, and we had to write them in a spreadsheet. And I understand you've done exactly the same, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And that's
The top line.
how we were able to find the numbers weekly. Because again, it's very important to know weekly numbers, because weekly numbers, you can plot it as in a time series, and you can see whether it goes up or whether it goes down. So really, I guess for public, it's very important to publish results as a time series of weekly data. And this is what our app, which we're building here, is doing, and this dashboard. So that's very good. I hope this answers the question which were asked about how do we get this number. So you just answered this question.
So that's the blue line. The orange line, I've just pasted a link into the chat window. If you open that link, that's another government source, and that's the official source to deaths with COVID. And what I did with that, when you get there, was just periodically downloaded that, and that provides the numbers of daily deaths with COVID over the period that I was analyzing, so the top line series. And all I did with that, because it's daily, is I just basically did a sum if to collect the numbers of weekly deaths for the orange line in that series.
Okay. So indeed, we see that we are doing the same process of extracting data from PDF files, and then we're trying to make a better sense out of the dynamics. Especially, it's very important to see the dynamics, right? Whether it goes up and down and so on.
Yeah.
So I would just like to remind everyone that you would be able to get the spreadsheet from this portal, and this portal, again, you can get to this portal by going idim.ca, and you would get a link directly to this portal, and there you would see all the numbers. So Jason, thank you very much for all this information which you have provided, and I know you started building a tool to extract those numbers automatically from PDF files. And in fact, I would like to make a little announcement for our next week. We probably will have, maybe we will dedicate the next couple of lunch learns specifically to the topic of extracting numbers from PDFs. So I'm showing right now our community, GC Collab community webpage, and this is where we have discussion happening about the topics of interest. And next week, again, a little announcement for the next week that we will be building a tool to automate the process. So instead of getting those numbers manually, ideally, it would be very nice to get those numbers automatically from PDF, and not, of course, only just from reports such as Government of Canada PDF, but recently there were many more PDFs which have become available to public, specifically from Pfizer manufacturer, and they describe many vaccine side effects which were registered or recorded, and only recently they were made available to public. So which is good news for us. So we will be able to analyze much more of those different side effects which are known about those vaccines. So I'm just quickly looking at the chat. If there are any other questions. So Jason, do you have any other comment which you would like to make about anything? Just because I know you would need to leave soon.
No, just if there are any questions, then if they can come through you, I'd be pleased to answer them and help out.
Okay,
We're just
okay.
trying to make sense of, as you are, a lot of data. It doesn't, I suppose it doesn't help that governments publish in PDF formats. Perhaps that's just making life a little bit difficult for us at the moment. It's a publishing format, not a data format. So yeah, I guess that would be a kind of
Okay.
my feedback on the pains of dealing with PDFs, really.
Okay. So maybe while we still have you here, I wanted to show you an effort which I've been trying. It's an effort of mine to put together in one dashboard all those critical numbers. I'm still in the process of deciding what would be the best, but this is what I currently have. So what I was thinking, that we should report weekly or possibly 6 months weekly averages for vaccine severe reactions versus deaths. And then, of course, we have those very important 3 questions which we need to be asking ourselves, I guess, all the time as we go through the pandemic. So first, are we still in pandemic? Because we do know that many countries already declared the end of pandemic. Canada is not one of those yet, but I think we're getting there. But how do we know, how would we know whether it's true or not? I guess by counting number of deaths and cases, but it's very important to understand that not all cases are actually fatal or even bring any complications. Many of them result in people getting natural immunity, which is known to be more robust than vaccine-induced immunity. So the first question here is, again, what is the situation with pandemic? And looks like, for example, for last week, we have really, that's the numbers we have last week in here. And compared to other causes of death, which are there, from cancer, from heart, even from accidents, we see that it's not as bad as it was last year, right? The next question, which we would like to know, is whether vaccine is still efficient. Because again, it was developed a year ago, and maybe it was developed for a particular variant. And at that time, it was showing some numbers which would prove the efficiency of vaccine. But now, as we look at these numbers, we see that last week, among all people who died of vaccine, actually, many of them were fully vaccinated. So that's the table which is shown right here. So we had 76% last week, but actually this week, as I've entered new data today, it's not 76, it's now 78% as of today. So when we look at all deaths which happened last week, 78% of those people who died of COVID were fully vaccinated. This is really quite a message for anyone who is really interested to see whether vaccines are efficient or not. So, but there's another question: how many cases resulted in deaths? And we can count all those numbers. And yes, in fact, we do see that people who are vaccinated, they are protected more. For example, for fully vaccinated with 2 doses, it's only 0.5% of people who are infected with COVID died. But what is interesting is that people with 3 doses actually died as much or with the same probability as people who are not vaccinated. So again, by looking at these numbers, one probably would ask this question: why, or how can we prove that vaccine or the booster in particular, the third dose, really helps if it doesn't reduces the risk of complications from infection, and if it does not reduce the risk of being infected. And we see, in fact, that most people who get infected, most people right now are fully vaccinated. So this is a very important sort of statement which we're making right now based on the data retrieved from official Government of Canada data. And again, these statistics or these numbers have become really very clear since December. Before December, it was not as clear, but since December, we would see, and we have many plots generated from this data. And again, all of you can just go to that spreadsheet and you could look at those plots yourself, but you would see all the numbers uploaded. And when they're plotted as time series, of course, it becomes very clear. So the blue line here is vaccination rates, right? And you see that people who are infected, in fact, fully vaccinated, get more frequently infected than unvaccinated. So that pretty much concludes the presentation which we wanted to do today. Again, just to cover those two topics and to introduce also you to the new portal which is being developed and to the new dashboard, which I hope will be ready by next meeting next Friday. I invite everyone again just to follow us on in social media. We started using Twitter and YouTube, so this recording will be also available on YouTube, and some other recent documents are also uploaded into this portal right now. And of course, there is much of effort all over the country right now, essential to stop vaccine mandates. And one of them is specifically even from our union, which launched the grievance against federal vaccination policy. So this is good news for those who were affected, and hopefully soon we'll get to normal and everyone will be treated equally again. So thank you very much, everyone. We use this opportunity to make use of data science to allow Canadians, everyone, to see the data themselves directly from raw data, not from one media channel or another media channel, not from one political leader or another political leader, but directly by going to the official document, getting the numbers, putting those numbers into spreadsheet like we're doing it right here, subtracting those numbers, plotting those numbers, and then you get answers to many of your questions, right? So feedback is very much welcome. As a scientist, we do encourage audience to ask as many questions as possible, because that's the only way we can make sure that we're not making mistakes anywhere. And again, if there are any other ideas, comments, or questions, you can reach me at dg@ivim.ca or at my other Gmail account. Thank you very much for everyone for attending this lunch learn today. Next week, we will continue